Welcome, 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 welcome. It
Thank you.
is great to see you. I know some of you. I do not know some of you yet, but I will by the end of the sessions. And we're really grateful. We love to put on the, now I'm going to forget what it's called, Transitioning Justice, Right to Redemption with inside and outside of carceral spaces. So there's going to be some we've woven hope throughout. Each of the three sessions will, in terms of the titles, they say, because our theory is if there's no hope, it's difficult to move to whatever comes next. Having that hope and generating it in horrible conditions is, of course, difficult. And it's almost a gift when it is a gift when that happens. Although one works very hard to get that gift. And so we're glad you're here. We'll have a general welcome to attendees, which is basically welcome this. And there'll be a somatic grounding. In each of the three sessions, you can come back for any of the remaining two sessions if you choose. The framework is the same for each one. There is the welcome. There's a somatic grounding exercise, and they look different. They'll be different in each of the different sessions. And then there'll be an introduction of the panel by Bernice Hurd, Abdi Lali Awad, and Kyle Rajad John Robinson. So, and then there'll be Q&A after that. And then we'll go into breakout rooms to discuss with the panelists in the breakout rooms. Leo, did I forget something?
That sounds just about right.
Okay. So somatic grounding who's doing the somatic grounding?
I've got you covered.
Well, good, because I wasn't planning on it.
Okay. So, yes, welcome. And thank you each for your patience as we continue to work out the glitches on building these bridges right across the walls. Prisons were designed to disconnect, to separate, to keep people apart and silenced. And this right here is just one more example of going against the status quo, of opening doors, of building bridges of connection and community that are not supposed to be possible. They're not supposed to be able to exist. And so thank you while we work out the actual physical and virtual construction of those. And so what we're going to be getting into today are people with lived experience, right? People who have been directly affected by the system of mass incarceration. And whether you know it or not, whether you've been incarcerated or not, you also have been affected by the system that is toxic and designed to harm and oppress and marginalize. It devastates our country and our families and our communities financially, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And so this is heavy stuff that we're getting into, and that's fun. Speaking of technical issues, here we are working this out. So I've had to join through my browser because I don't have sufficient permissions to get the latest Zoom. Yeah. So pivoting, as is our way. For a moment. I'd like to acknowledge the pain exists in the world and that we have a tendency to look at a person, to see someone, or to hear a name, to hear the story of someone, the and be portrayed, see the image of someone portrayed, and take that at face value. And so often that is what happens within our carceral system, within our carceral state. And that's why we have a Carceral Societies Section within the Transitioning Justice Lab, is to rehumanize those who have been dehumanized by this system and by the society within which this system exists. And so acknowledging that and leaning into that is why we have the panelists that we do today. And I'm hoping that Abdi is going to be able to make it in. Lane is troubleshooting behind the scenes to make that happen. And in the meantime, I'm very honored to introduce our panelists for this session. The first one being Vernice Hurd, who I've had the distinction of working with in the Transitioning Justice Lab for a while now. And she also has done work with Restorative Arlington in Virginia and with George Mason University. She is a resident advisor, a 2021 the 2021 Peacebuilding Fellow, 2021 Women of Color Advancing Peace and Security Fellow. And she has also advocated for bills that aim to restrict the use of solitary confinement and for more affordable communication with phone calls and emails within prisons in the state of Virginia to Virginia legislators. She's also done research on how gentrification is being perceived by and discussed by Northwest DC residents, and is currently doing research on racial minimization in the legislative trajectory of the Crown Act. And our second panelist, who will hopefully be able to join us, currently incarcerated scholar, Abdi Lali Awad. He is a certified yoga instructor, nationally certified yoga instructor, a graduate student set to graduate on May 9th in adult and higher education. He is a research graduate assistant at the University of Southern Maine, two-time OSHA Lifelong Learning Institute Fellow from USM, Senior Justice Scholar from the Opportunity Scholar Catherine Cutler Institute. He is the co-chair of the Graduate Students Board, a peer, mentor, and supporter, a restorative justice practitioner and steering committee member here at Maine State Prison, an RJ consultant, the Prison Islamic Community Imam and Liaison, and UCLA Dream Summer 2023 Fellow. And rounding out this rockstar panel is Kyle Rashad Robinson, who I've been blessed to engage with on the Amplified Silence podcast. He is a convict empowerment specialist, moved by his own post-incarceration experiences to encourage our society to address excessive and unjust incarceration practices. Kyle is the creator of Amplified Silence, a project designed to empower incarcerated individuals in their social justice endeavors, and a founding member of About Time Toastmasters, a club intended to prepare and equip advocates for prison reform. Chartering About Time Toastmasters, a space intended to develop presentation skills of formerly incarcerated advocates, deepening their potential for impactful advocacy. An Amplified Silence project is archiving the stories of wrongly or excessively incarcerated people in audio form. Finally, his individual advocacy is helping people in confinement through research, outreach, and task management. And so let's give him a round of applause. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And I will turn it over to Vernice to start us off.
Hello, everyone. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. Just let me know if you are able to see. Are you guys able to hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So Give me 1 second. And also, can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect, perfect, perfect. So I will be presenting on what I believe is the right to redemption on behalf of the Transitioning Justice Lab within the Carceral Spaces section. So the premise of my conversation today is that I feel that the effects of institutionalization must be heavily considered in thinking about a person's life before, during, and after incarceration. I also feel that a single mistake should not define a person's entire life. Also, every human being has the potential to grow as long as we as a community are able to provide access and support for their personal needs. And I also feel that it is not fair to expect someone to successfully reintegrate back into society independent of the proper support and access to mental and physical health care, housing, employment, and education. I also want to share a quote with you guys that my history teacher, my world history teacher in high school used to say all the time when teaching us about like all the revolutions that have happened around the world. She has always said, you know, when people are hungry, what they will do is they revolt. So yeah. Starting with the topic of recidivism. Recidivism is defined as the tendency of a convicted criminal to reoffend, and that is presented to you by Oxford Languages. As of 2019, it has been reported that the recidivism rate for state prisoners is at 84%. For federal prisoners who are sentenced for nonviolent crimes, it's 39.8%, and for violent crimes, it is 64%. Studies have shown that individuals who serve longer prison sentences have a higher risk of recidivism. In the 1999 analysis conducted by the Sentencing Project, an average of 30 months served in prison led to a 29% rate of recidivism. Well, 29% chance of recidivism. An average of 12.9 months in prison was at 26% chance of recidivism. I would just like to say that recidivism often occurs due to the stigmatization and the lack of accessible resources upon reentry. So today I will also be discussing the modified labeling theory. So labeling theory suggests that when an individual is labeled as an offender, the individual may internalize those labels and withdraw from society. I feel like this can be applied to as when somebody is being called ugly for a lot of their life. Like I will use my own personal experience, for example, like to now as I am like a college student, it's kind of like when you are kind of being critiqued or when you're being told that your work is not good enough, sometimes when I'm doing work, it becomes really, really difficult for me to actively do the work that I'm trying to do for school or with my artwork, because sometimes I'll start feeling like it's not even worth it. And that I feel like that is just a form of like internalization. But with what the source that I am referencing today, they basically done an experiment where they used a theory called modified labeling theory, which suggests that when individuals are a part of a stigmatized group, for example, people who are currently incarcerated, they often anticipate the negative stereotypes and they internalize those negative stereotypes. And in dealing with the stigmatization of their very own identity, they might turn to different ways of coping. A lot of studies that I've read basically said that, you know, before and after incarceration, you know, whenever somebody's identity is stigmatized in a certain way, they can resort to coping mechanisms such as, you know, drinking, doing drugs, or just committing violence or like gang violence and like crime in general. In a study that assessed 163 inmates from June 2002, I missed a zero, to May 2007, upon entry, release, and 1 year after release, they noticed that a lot of the people who were released and a lot of the inmates kind of took on this like why try narrative, saying that like, you know, why would I even try to apply for this job or try to take these opportunities knowing that these people are just going to look at me as nothing but a criminal. There were other factors that were within this experiment. There was race that also played a big role, and it often does. But I really wanted to focus on how within this study, they really just focused on the why try effect and how basically the stigmatization only made the recidivism rate worse. And well, it's like indirectly it made it worse. But so basically the why try effect is the perception of stigma can lead to the anticipation of personalized stigmatization, which can anticipate poor social adjustment. This can also be an effect of systemic stigmatization. I feel like that also goes along with with the discussion of like civil and social death that occurs when a person is released from prison. So basically, if you have like a criminal background or a criminal record at all, you lose your voting rights. There are restrictions on employment because a lot of people who are looking for employees run background checks, and they usually don't want to hire someone with the criminal background. And also that person can be ineligible for financial assistance within housing and education. So with that being said, I feel like it is really important that, you know, before somebody is incarcerated, while somebody is incarcerated, and after somebody is incarcerated, it is very imperative that, you know, our government and who we are as a community are providing the proper resources, because recidivism and crime do not occur within just like a vacuum. It is not something that you just wake up one day and you choose to do. It is usually an onset of, you know, environmental circumstances, who you have around you or lack thereof. Too often when individuals are in the process of reentry after incarceration, they are left without the proper resources that promote personal growth and rehabilitation, such as, you know, employment opportunities, access to housing, access to education, mental and physical health care. Trying to manage without these resources through the process of like criminal justice is very difficult. And that may cause people to act out of, you know, desperation. You know, like I said before, when people are hungry, they revolt. You know, just for adding like more discussion to this point, there were a lot of times where I would be around like friends growing up, and it's like when they didn't have a lot to receive back home, you take it. You know, I've always believed that when people are not getting what they need, they will end up taking what they need. A lot of people have also noticed this. It's kind of just like referencing, you know, an interview that I watched with like Tupac Shakur. He has stated multiple times that, you know, the government really needs to start considering the needs of people, especially in the lower class, because it is one thing for us to knock on the door and, you know, ask for some food, but then it escalates to a different thing when you are knocking on that door for so long and you're not getting it, and people will start barging in. And it's also like, I also want to reference, you know, like Ali Sadiq, who is a comedian who served, I believe, like 6 years in prison on a drug offense. And he went in one of his, you know, specials, he tells the story about how he got into selling drugs and things like that. And he felt like he had to start doing that because he was receiving a lot of pressure from his mom to like move out. And so once he like got connected in his neighborhood, they were saying like, you might as well just like sell drugs, because you're going to start wanting things and you're going to start needing things, and you want to be able to provide those things for yourself. And I just say all that to say, it's just like when somebody's deprived of opportunities for the things that, you know, American society believes makes somebody a productive human being, or even makes a person a human being in general, they can't discredit that person for doing what they need to do in order to survive, you know? So yeah, next point. I also wanted to discuss how a lot of times, you know, prosecution is often a process of dehumanization, especially within the United States. Looking at Preston Shipp, who was a former prosecutor for the state of Tennessee, he said in an article he wrote for the ACLU, you know, it is easy to forget that the person on the other side of the courtroom is a person just like you. From his observation, he notices that the goal to inflict punishment as a reaction to crime is often really, really counterproductive to the mission of deterring crime and reforming somebody into a, you know, productive human being during the process of reentry. In order to effectively provide justice, Shipp argues that the system requires humility, compassion, and accountability of not only those being persecuted, but also the system that is doing the prosecution or persecution. But, you know, to the last bullet point, the criminal justice system does not work to understand individuals and the circumstances that motivated their behavior and the resources that they need in order to prevent criminal behavior, which completely dismisses their humanity. And these are just my sources for today's presentation. Give me 1 second. Can you guys all see me? Okay. So I basically just
Thank
said,
you.
oh, no problem. But I basically just say all of that to say that I'm like basically a part of this discussion today because I really do believe that crime and criminal activity does not exist within a vacuum. I feel like that is giving human beings like way too much credit. Like nobody wakes up one day and just comes up with a scheme. If that, usually it's enabled by something that has happened to them. It is enabled by trauma. And that can also be enabled through the criminal justice system. You know, when somebody is locked up for so long, and especially usually in the US, prisons are not really designed to help a person be viewed as a human being. They are often designed to basically diminish that person's identity and make them feel less than, hoping that that shows them a lesson. But usually that does not work because the way that the prison system provides like so much structure to the daily life, the person becomes, you know, institutionalized. And what ends up happening is that when they leave, that person does not know how to live within their own identity. And I feel like that is a major, major problem within the United States. And that is why, like, I do the work I do, and that is why I feel like it's very important that I'm like working with people such as Leo and Patricia, and you know, now, because you know, you get to see that, especially you get to see that how resources such as education and resources such as employment is doing like so much for, you know, people who are, you know, serving their time for something that they understand that they did and understanding that harm that they do. And so I just say all that to say, like, thank you so much for inviting me. And I'm excited for today's discussion. So I will give it away to, if he's here, Abdi. Abdi.
It would be, we are, since we are still fighting with technology in the background, I will pass the mic to my main man, Kyle, who is ready to go. Born ready, stays ready. Thank you.
Hey everyone, thanks for being a part of this discussion. Can everyone hear me? Okay. I don't know about y'all, but I'm very, very nervous. And it probably doesn't appear that way, but trust me, It's a very familiar feeling for me. I'm going to give you a little bit of my background, my story, and if you listen, you will likely notice very much of what the last presenter spoke to from a different angle. Does anyone hear background noise? Okay,
No.
cool.
Nope. You are good to go. Clear as day, brother. You got this.
Thank you. So I'm a childhood survivor of incarceration. I went to prison at 16, charged as an adult, and it greatly, I can't even speak to the duration, the extent of the impact that it's had on my life. It affects me to this day. And I was told back then, this is going to affect you for the rest of your life, but I never had any idea just how much. I wish that I could give that to you over a 10 to 15 minute presentation, but I've spent years trying to help people to grasp the gravity of what we put other human beings through in our incarceration process with marginal success. So at 16, I'm in prison for an environment, and you know, humans, we're very highly adaptable creatures. I quickly learned how I need to be in there to survive. These learned behaviors would show up after I was released from prison. They showed up in job interviews. They showed up in personal relationships, romantic relationships. They showed up in my time management and in other forms of development that are too numerous to list. But I'll give you an example of a couple. Job interviews. I have no idea how many job interviews I won't say ruined, how many I failed to capture because you as an interviewer, you have no idea that my difficulty making eye contact is not a sign of dismissal. It's a learned survival mechanism that's, you know, been ingrained in me for years. The greatest impact probably manifests in the way that I communicate. So the person who you see here communicating today, not that I'm doing a great job at it, I don't think I am, would love to get a restart. But if you had gone back maybe 2 years ago, I would be presenting very, very differently. And that's because the impact of living in a physical structure where everything around me is designed to show me that I don't matter and that I'm not being heard and that no one cares. Well, after a while, I gave up talking, not literally, but I gave up understanding the value in my own story because it was so invalidated by society. Today, I'm only able to sit here in front of you because over time, about 12 to maybe close to 15 years after I was released, my reentry began. Now, we all know when reentry should start, right? It should start the day someone goes to prison. Mine started about 15 years after I got out. And the key element of it was someone taking the time to help me develop therapeutic self-insight. And as they did that over time, I began to just become unlocked. You know, there's so much that was contained or restricted. And I saw this amongst everybody, pretty much everybody who I was incarcerated with. The similarities with people, I'm sure the statistics speak to them. I know they do. And I'm sure you all are probably familiar with those. I won't bore you with those. But of course, most of us were traumatized before we got there. Before we get to prison, there is there is a progressive or regressive process in which, without even going to prison, many people have the same experience that prison fossilized for me, which is that your voice doesn't matter. Your experience is not valid. You are not worthy of a human being, of acceptance from us as a society. When I finally did begin to get some therapeutic self-insight, oh, it was so relieving. It didn't take there was not even a thought in my head. There wasn't a long decision-making process. I didn't start reaching out to people asking, can I do this? I immediately got in contact with people who were incarcerated, and that's where my work began. Early 2022, I first met someone who was incarcerated excessively and unjustly, and is innocent. Expected for them to be out on the 26th of next month. But this person really inspired the work that I do. So hopefully at the next conference, I'll be able to bring him here as an attendee. The work that I got into as a volunteer, or not as a volunteer, just, I'm not sure how to classify it. I began connecting with people on the inside, press and record, and documenting their stories. What I learned, the key takeaway from this experience and why I'm sharing it, is that there's a pattern of experiences that I would hear over conversation that helped me kind of put words to mine here in this speech or this presentation. First time someone introduces themselves to me, there's a warming up session, or an unstated and unspoken, familiarizing yourself with the other person. Second time that they speak to me and tell their story, they sound a little more comfortable with it, and with a little bit of validation from me as someone who's been there, who understands what it's like to see abuse and neglect that's normally I would say it's too revolting to specify, but I'll try to specify it vaguely, or how do you specify? I'll try to specify it for you. Seeing people damn near freeze to death. Seeing people live in conditions that are not climate controlled. Seeing people forced to work, plantation style, forced to work. for pennies an hour, maybe make 20 bucks a month. Let me back this screen up because I feel like I'm out of the frame. Seeing people work and bring home, $20 a month, have to pay $3 for soap, have to pay $3 for a phone call, and decide which child or family member they're going to try to speak to that month, and then having to repeat the process over again. That is the horror of what we put other people through. And each person who I would interview, by the third or fourth call, the third or fourth interview, they sounded completely different. What I would hear is a restoration, a coming to life. Except Leo. Leo was already there. He was quite an exception to the rule in some ways. But most people had to be, shaken, awakened, and reminded that they count as human beings. That's the process for a lot of people inside. On the outside, once you get out, and if you don't mind, Leo, give me I didn't check the clock before I started speaking, so give me like a heads up when it, when I need to wrap it up in 2 to 3 minutes, if you don't mind. Once I got out, including once I began to get up, when I re-entered society in a meaningful way, it remains very difficult to find employment. It's damn near impossible. It remains almost impossible to escape the stigma. It's internal and it's external. When I'm afraid to fill out an application because I know what's going to happen, or because I've had the conversation so many times in my head with friends who, recommend, oh, why don't you try this? Why don't you apply for this place? Why don't you? And I know in my head that I'm automatically disqualified from said job because it requires a license, and I've applied for that type of thing before, and I understand which jobs are available to me based on previous experience applying and research and lots of failure. After a while, you internalize, again, like when you're in prison, that you don't matter. Well, everyone being here is a reminder to me that I do. What I hope that you'll leave this conversation with is an example, because I hadn't got to any. I know this has been kind of all negative. I haven't got to any of the good stuff yet. And I don't know if I have time for it, but I hope that you'll understand when you leave here, and everyone watching, the difference between simple validation. We know that as felons, we know that you can't fix the world. We know you can't snap your fingers and make them change the law. Trust me, we've tried. But what you can do is continue to take a part, however that looks for you, play a part in this battle. Now, today that looks a few different ways for me. There is, most importantly for me, individual advocacy. I had the lucky experience, the very fortunate experience of, because of the people who I met who were incarcerated that I began connecting with, a domino effect pattern of meeting a lot of awesome people on the inside. I'm starting now to match that on the outside. Thank you. So if you can provide for people what you provided me with, a listening ear, an open mind, and judgment-free acceptance, then what you will do is find yourself, like in my story, progressively empowering people to take accountability or to gain the responsibility over their own lives after it has been stripped from them. I'm gonna rest the mic right there, and actually I'm gonna rest it in just a moment. Let me pick it back up for a second. If you are interested in further learning about some of my efforts and what individual advocacy looks like for me, or if you want to find people on the inside to connect with who are people that are a lot better than me, if you ask me, or them, then just get in contact with me. I'll put my contact info in the chat, my email. Everyone here is welcome to use it, and reach out if I can be of service to anyone. I will say nothing else. I'm Kyle, and I'm done speaking. Thank you.
Very well done, brother. Thank you. Because you do matter. You are seen. You are valued. The work that you have done and continue to do to show up for people in the ways that people have shown up for you and that you know is so very much needed. Deeply, deeply appreciated. So thank you. And thank you for showing up. Thank you for leaning into that discomfort of being put on the spot. I know it was short notice, and you really came through. So thank you. Yes, please share your contact info. And I definitely encourage people to reach out. And I gotta say, your timing was 100% perfect because so Brother La, you are right on time for me to put you on the spotlight. Gave you a glowing introduction while we've been trying to get you on screen. And I know that you've done and continue to do a lot of good work on the inside. So I'll give you a second to get set, get your headphones in. And when you're ready, the floor is yours. We've talked so far about the harms in the system and how recidivism is soaked and fueled by stigmatization, and heard from Kyle about his experience and his advocacy in trying to break these cycles. And so you, as someone who I've been honored to work with in restorative practices and been incarcerated with for a number of years now, if you can share with us from your perspective. Welcome.
I'm glad I'm in. And I apologize for the late arrival. I've been trying to get in here, and I was also actually in a reserve justice training from like 9 to 3 this morning. So if I'm a little tired, forgive me. So he introduced me, so I'm gonna leave it as that. And so I'm talking about hope and redemption and recovery. So I'm gonna take one of Leo's playbook. So if you could put in the chat, what color that comes to your mind when you think about a hope? Like if hope has a color, what would it be? And don't press it in until we're gonna do it all at once. So if you could put in the chat room, if you can give color to hope, what that color be? So I'm assuming everybody's ready. So We'll do it at once. 1, 2, 3, and then let's do it. Okay. I would say hope is all those colors because we all have individual hopes, and each one of us, the hope we have has its own color, and that's what it just, and that's how we look at a hope. And when I think of hope, I think about hope in all different stages in my life. And when I was asked to do asked by Leo to do this, I'm like, what should I do? What should I prepare? You know, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to be presentation. What should I write? So I'm gonna be honest. I showed up. I say I'm gonna show myself. Then I'm gonna speak. So hope for me is at different stages. I feel like I lived up hope uh, all my life. And to give you a little background, as you can tell from my accent, I was born in Somalia. I was born in 1 year after the war started in my native country. And at the time that war started, the dictator from my country, he was targeting and killing all the boys and men from my tribe. And for the hope of surviving in different conversation that it is today in American society, but I was dressed like a little girl so I won't get killed. So that was my first introduction to hope if I ever knew what hope was, the hope to survive. And I I lived hopeful until I was 12 when I started immigrating to the United States, started the process. And the hope continued for me. And then got introduced to the American culture and things like that. And it blocked me to a spot where it showed me America where I belong. You know, what side of the fence do I belong to? Who I belong to? I came here as a man with identity, who knew like whose bloodline is, where he come from. Uh, you know, man who was proud of even the hardships. Is still proud of his ethnicity. Yeah, I'm Somali. I carried it, but that didn't exist. So there was a two America. There was a white America and black America. So they say, I don't care what you think about yourself. You better push you over to the push you over to the Black America. And I think all of us in this video, we know what that represents. We know what that is. You know, we might not. Some of us might. Some of us experience it. Some of us are aware of it. What that is. So that's my introduction to hope, and I'm still hopeful, right? So now I made some mistakes along the way, and that's not a secret. I made some actions that I'm not proud of, and I am what I am today because of those. And my road to redemption, or what redemption is, I can only speak for what redemption means to me, because the only way I can speak of redemption is to own my own experience. So I didn't like the idea of redeeming because I never lost myself. You know, I'm always been me. Always been me. My environment has changed. Some actions might have contributed to who to my actions, but the idea of redemption, I struggled with it for some time. What do I need to redeem from? You know, I still know who I am. I'm still a human being, and I'm playing block of the social building, the social contract of it. But in the process of thinking about a redemption, I was like, I decided not love, you know, keep holding on to hope and do not let my status, incarceral status, be define me who I am. So I decided with that, in the process of redeeming myself, education. How do I serve others through education, through serve justice, through whether it's yoga, whether to is my religion and my faith, and redeeming my actions through those, like waking up every morning and knowing that making my bed, making my bunk, I won't call it bed, but making my bunk, fixing my bunk when I wake up and leaving out of my cell, that uh, I did accomplish something today. I did that. So now I have to go move forward with the next step. Whether that is saying refusing to let my environment define me who I am, or finding other ways to connect with outside. And I hope, Leo, you will give me the time's up when I'm close. Um, so my redemption has been through not only my own work, but also through community. You know, like whether that is my yoga community, education community, faith community, incarceral abolitionist community, or whatever that was. So that's how give me the gas, give me the things to redeem myself, to be a redemption on it, and knowing that you are but under your worst mistakes, and worst mistakes, worst decisions, however one can accept define one's action, and with that it also comes recovery. And when I think of recovery, I don't, for the purpose of speaking today, I don't think recovery as in uh, substance use disorder recovery from it. I'm thinking about recovering from my past, which is leads on to the redemption, recovering from things I witnessed, uh, recovering from planning to recover from my carceral conditioning. When you're in prison, you are you take in the system whether you like it or not. You live in peace of yourself each day in here, but it's not how much you leave. It's not whether you leave in pieces behind in prison or not. The question is, how much of yourself are you leaving, and how much of are you letting go, and being aware of how much of you leaving behind. And I'm close this with something friend of mine, colleague and friend of mine shared with me, who did a prison bed, and who's in the outside and working and continue doing things. And he tells me when he came in during our yoga training, we're having a conversation with the class, and he goes, and that's what bring you back to prison. He goes, I left a piece of me. The 7 years I did here, I left a piece of me, and I'm here to collect it and take it back to make me as a whole. So I do not want to do that. When God willing, inshallah, when I leave here and I come back, I want to put pieces back together for others. I don't want to leave too many pieces for me that I have to come back and collect it. And I think I'll stop right there. Thank you. Yeah.
That is beautiful, brother. Thank you. And so, a little bit of Q&A time. Be interested to hear from each of our panelists. Bring each one of you up. Big thanks to each of you for showing up and sharing your experience and your wisdom and knowledge in this area. And so while we wait for Lali to get back, since there he is, a question was posed in the chat, and I'd like to invite our participants, if you have any questions, please feel free to throw them in the chat. But I had a couple questions come in for you, Lali, for just a moment ago. Disappeared on me. Chat second. One second. There we go. So can you talk about a particularly meaningful moment or experience in your journey that has stayed with you? And what do you hope to achieve in the future, both personally and professionally?
A moment. I have, I would say I have a lot of moments. I remember one of the greatest moments that stuck with me was after we completed our yoga teacher training, we all sat around and my teacher, oh, congratulate us that she did the ritual. And she put we made a circle, we sat down, and she made everyone sit on front of everybody. So we went to circle, and everybody has to say something about that person, right? And everybody in that room cried, including me. Now we cried because it was a pain, but we was crying because we created an experience that I don't know how it happened, and I don't think it ever be recreated. But there was something that stuck with me forever, and that had that. And another one would be when I graduated from yoga and I slapped the warden from the back, now the commissioner, because the environment was so relaxed that I forgot about he was the warden. So those things, you know, stuck with me. Or graduating from college. So yes, I have a lot of moments. But as for my future, I have a lot of goals. The one I want to do, the first one is I hope is to get my professionally. I want to get into on my PhD. That's my personal, my professional, and I hope to do that soon. Maybe this started, maybe this fall. Uh, Personally, I really want to be the change that I want to be. I want to be the person that is there uh, when I was looking for. Uh, I want to be the advice that I was looking for, not the one that was given to me, not the one that was told, "Hey, you gotta have to do this, you gotta do that." I want to be the advice that was there, that I needed it when it's there for someone else. And if I can do that for one person, I think if I can do it for one person, I think I accomplished my goal in life.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And that's real. So I'd like to ask, right, each of us, you don't stumble, you don't really stumble into this work. Um, this is a day by day commitment. And so I'd like to ask Vernice and then pass it to Kyle. What is it, not just what is it that brought you into this work and line of study, but what keeps you in it? What keeps you dedicated?
Um, for me, in this line of study, it's like I talk about like what my capstone is a lot because I feel like it's extremely important. And so like, you know, my capstone is focusing like on racial minimization and the legislative trajectory of the Crown Act. And what the Crown Act is basically meant to do is prohibit racial discrimination on the basis of hair, right? You know, we all know racial discrimination is like already wrong. That's obvious, you know, but what is hard as a Black person, well, I identify as Black. I'm half Japanese, but I grew up knowing I was Black, you know, that I don't know a lick of Japanese, only, yeah. So, but as a Black woman, I was always, you know, told growing up, I had to calm down a lot. Cause like, you know, I'm very chill 80% of the time, but when there's that 20% that, you know, where I feel like I have to turn up, I get there. But I'm always told that I have to calm down, or even in times where it's like I'm expressing myself, I'm like, often been told by even my own family members who are minorities in this country, like, you know, you might want to chill, or you might want to make sure that you're not presenting yourself in a certain way, especially in front of like white people. And oftentimes those are the same people who are like looking at my job applications, watching me, you know, present my ideas, and, you know, also just like looking at me while I'm just working and or just like walking around all the time. And it's like, even then I have to heavily consider all the time, like my hair, you know, like, do I want my hair to be out? Do I want to be braided? Do I want it to be in the style it is now? And, you know, I started studying the Crown Act because it's so much more to racism that affects the Black community. You know, the Crown Act is aiming to prohibit hair discrimination because a lot of workplace grooming policies restrict against styles that are very important to Black culture, such as dreadlocks or locks, such as cornrows, braids, and twists. And, you know, I feel like what I'm studying specifically, such as, you know, like how it's being perceived in the House, or like how it was being perceived in like to the Republicans in the 117th Congress, it's so small compared to the issue at hand, you know, so small, because, you know, like there have been children who have to like cut their hair, like in order to just go to school, or they have to be suspended from school because they're like, I don't feel like cutting my hair. Like, I do not want to do that, you know, just to attend school. This is a right. This should be a human right to me. And in order for me to succeed in this country, the least I need is some education. And you guys are about to kick me out on the premise of my hair. And then that is just like only one small factor into why people resort to other avenues of life, you know? That's like one really, really small thing. And I really feel like what drives me in studying reentry, or like working with reentry, or, you know, even working with the Transitioning Justice Lab and continuing to do my research, is like the fact that these are like the big issues of the smaller issues of the big issue, if that makes any sense. And it's really hard to explain, you know, like it's really, really hard. It's really difficult to explain because, you know, I feel like with what happens with people in this country is that, like, if you are not good enough to whatever philosophy is running this government right now, you're just not a human being. Like, and that's just what it is. And it's so much more. I need like probably more time to like explain it. It'll probably take me months to explain it, but it's hard because you are like, you know, people who are like have been incarcerated and haven't been incarcerated, who are still feeling like they're just not good enough, or like just feeling like they have to, because they know like they're not qualified enough in this society, they have to start doing certain things just to hustle, just to make some money. And oftentimes those things get them in jail. And like, I spent a lot of my time growing up, like looking around me and just saying like, you know, I wouldn't resort to crime because like, yeah, like I never resorted to crime and I wouldn't ever do it, you know. But there have been times where it's like, I feel like, dang, like my mom needs help, you know, just to take care of me. And so I feel like I need to go out and make some money. And like, you'll see some of my friends, they're like selling drugs and they're like doing all this stuff because they know they're not doing it for fun. They're doing it for survival. You know, some people are stealing out of stores for the sake of survival, you know, and it has a lot to do with just like racial stigmatization. And it has a lot to, it's like a never ending cycle sometimes, it feels like, because it's like you have to deal with just feeling like you have to code switch or feeling like you have to just like build up a different persona than who you even are because you just have to make it in society. Like that's the way you have to like present yourself. And it's so like interconnected with like so many different issues. And it's that's like really what just drives me. It's just like I feel like incarceration is like such a big issue, especially within the Black community. But it has so much to do with like the little things that happen due to like a bigger thing, like a bigger systemic issue that not a lot of us even know how to bring up or even talk about. And like I just say all of that to say like what drives my work is the fact that like there's just so much work that needs to be done, you know, is that there's just so much, even though we have progressed as a country and it's a lot different than what it was, you know, like over 100 years ago or even over 50 years ago, there's still so many things that are still negatively impacting, you know, certain communities in our country, and and those communities involve like people who are currently incarcerated, people who are like reintegrating after incarceration, people who are susceptible to incarceration, and you know that especially has to do with, you know, people of color. So with that, I pass to Kyle.
Thanks. There's a few things that keep me involved in this work. I'll just name a few. One of them is it's something that Leo and Abdi only they can understand it, but I'll try to put words to it, which is I and all of us could sit here and talk to you all day about what it's like to be inside a prison and never begin to give you that experience. The society is so disconnected from the actual experience that it puts people in through that it would take generations of time to express the impact on the individuals, on their families, on their children who grow up and often become incarcerated too. Another thing, I'm probably not supposed to say this in public, hatred, resentment, I should say. I know there's not a crime that you can imagine that happened on a plantation that's not happening as we speak right now, in 50 states right now. The resentment of hearing people debate about this as if it's even a question, as if the immorality the inhumanity that we're putting people through is up for question. Another thing is just hopefully a reasonable perspective. I can understand that a lot of people many people would probably get out of prison and want to stay the hell away from that environment. But I think it impacts some of us in a way to where, it impacts me when I see people like Leo, people who are incarcerated, and I could name 50 just off the top of my head, that I'm personally close to. I see people like Leo who are moving the Overton window on what we think it's possible to be driven from prison. I see people who I advocate for on different platforms I'll give an example of one. Her name is Tamara Washington. She's in the state of Michigan. Innocent and wrongly convicted, sentenced to 32 to 50 years for a crime that didn't happen. This person, once getting connected with me, rather than centering themselves in their own story, they come with the question of how can we make a platform or an outlet for everybody in here. Now in Michigan, there's just one women's prison, so it was much more doable to do what she said and to create a social media page on Facebook. It's called Miscarrying, to play on words. Miscarrying is one word, but Miscarrying Justice League just started it a couple of weeks ago and could definitely use some help with it if anyone is in the social media management. It's not my strong point. So just to summarize, there's my personal attachment to the issue. There's the scale at which people who don't have the luck and fortune that I do to be out, who are still doing it on the inside. It would be hard to look someone like Leo in the face or Abdi in the face if I was doing any kind of other work. Hopefully society will come to value it more quickly, but that rests in the hands of the work that we do, everyone sitting in this room. I'll pass it back to Leo.
Vernice, Kyle, Lali, thank you. Now, we had some technical difficulties in the beginning, so we ended up running later than anticipated. I know we had breakout rooms scheduled for this portion, but with our final 10 minutes, I'd like to open the floor for reflections for many of our participants. What is something that has landed with you? What's sitting with you? And or what question might you have for any of our panelists? Feel free to raise your hand virtually or just come off mic, off mute. Kyle?
I have a question, and this is for Abdi. Inside of prison walls, there's usually a culture that makes it a culture in which you don't value the success or good news that happens to other people. As you've taken up yoga, you seem like you found an enlightenment, peace, and you get something from that. What do people around you experience as a result of yoga being added to your life?
I would say when people used to ask me when I had my when I just finished my BA, they'd be like, they're like, "Oh, you graduated from college, you got your bachelor's," and I would tell them, "I love college. I learned it. It's good, but if you ask me, I'm proud of being a yoga instructor than owning a yoga certificate than owning a college degree. It's okay. I say college degree will open me the doors, but it's not gonna open the hearts of others because yoga really connects. You know, I love to be called the yoga guy. You know, when walking the hallway or like when somebody trying to describe me and they don't know who I am or what, you know, hey, yeah, yeah, the yoga guy, you know, or if they see something movie on a TV or yoga show, like, hey, Abdi or Lali, whichever name they use, hey, you seen that yoga? So it become about my identity. And how do that help? It really connects. You know, it really gives the people. I love to see people smile uh, when they come to my yoga class. Even though the COVID has kind of cut the numbers of the classes down that we were able to teach and the programs had expanded, but I love I'll share one of my favorite memories, two memories. One, a guy would tell me all the time, man, I'm yoga high. He said every time I do yoga, nothing bothers me. I don't care if I'm having a family problem. I don't care if I'm having anything. He said he used to call it yoga high. The other thing was I remember I taught one. We was in one class, taught one class one day, and some of the guys uh, came from other different prisons that it was they don't even take their shoes off. Forget about closing their eyes, you know, because the environment they was building, the type of prison environment. Yeah. And see them guys snoring in the classroom, passed out and snoring out and hey, going around waiting the class is over. And waking up, they act like they did something wrong, but then reflecting on it, say, okay, I'm saying, man, I know this, I don't know what this is. And for them to keep coming back that had never done the yoga, that itself makes me something because I know when I practice yoga, I never regret it. I'm never angry after I leave the class. I might come a little pissed or something mindset before I start, but I know 100% I'm not going to leave that mat than being the best version of me. So passing on to that and seeing the expression of the guys, seeing the guys, you know, keep. I don't want to use the keep encouraging me. Hey, when we're going to do a class? When we're going to come back to that? And when you get to it so much that listen, man, I can't keep doing this, then I know I'm doing something. So yes, I don't know if I answered your question, but I run all over the place. But yes, it really changes the environment. The whole, I believe in that force energy that that just can take the whole the environment when there's so many classes. And I'm not the only yoga teacher. There's a few of us here that do the work, and even teaching yoga in cages that happen here in the segregation unit when you can't make a no contact with the person. It's not. It isn't like that anymore. I don't believe there's that too many people in those cases now in the present moment. But even taken there, that actually inspired me to continue doing it and have, you know, imagine making a no contact in the yoga, teaching through a little cages, calling the guys through from the outside. So yes, and yeah.
Thanks for answering my question. Leo, I have a question for you, but I don't want to go back. I want to give the space to other people to ask the question first. But if there's room at the end, I have one for you, Bill.
Well, you know what? Go for it. What do you got?
All right. So the world right now is resetting or trying to calibrate itself for the major increase, the major boost, the expected wealth coming, if you will, to everyone's capability. In short, artificial intelligence. The world's using artificial intelligence, and it's impossible to calculate just how great of an impact it's going to have. Language models, everyone's probably heard of Chat GPT here, I assume. Have you, on the inside, had the benefit of access to it, or people on the outside using it on your behalf? And if not, do you see room for that to enhance your ability to advocate and grow and be a leader?
No, no easy.
Hold on,
I have heard. So no easy questions, huh? So yes, I have heard of ChatGPT, but that's only because of the work that I do at Kobe as a visiting instructor. Outside of that, I wouldn't even know about that. And I just learned the phrase, learned the term a couple of months ago. And so I have not had the experience of engaging with it. And I would be surprised if many people who are not in college, and I'd be surprised if there were people in college here who knew about ChatGPT and had access to it. And
Okay.
so,
Well,
in
I
short,
apologize. I don't want to push you to describe something you haven't seen, but
nope. So,
I
what I would say is that there could be definitely avenues of opening the door for people to be able to interact with the world in new ways, and that's something that we need to be open to. And so, thank you, and I'm hoping that one day we do get there, because we are making progress. Yeah, will do. And so, Bernice Hurd, Kyle Robinson, Lali Awad, thank you for your time today. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and your experience with us. And to honor people's time, I would like to share with you a that was recommended to me by one of our panelists from the third session this evening. So stick around. We're going to have an interlude filled with music reflective of the themes today. And we still have 2 sessions to go. Time, but first, this space into the power in honor of the power of today's sharing. Kuan Yin's prayer for the abuser. To those who withhold refuge, I cradle you in safety at the core of my being. To those that cause a child to cry out, I grant you the freedom to express your own choked agony. To those that inflict terror, I remind you that you shine with the purity of 1,000 suns. To those who would confine, suppress, or deny, I offer the limitless expanse of the sky. To those who need to cut, slash, or burn, I remind you of the invincibility of spring. To those who cling and grasp, I promise more abundance than you could ever hold on to. To those who vent their rage on small children, I return to you your deepest innocence. To those who must frighten into submission, I hold you in the bosom of your original mother. To those who cause agony to others, I give the gift of free-flowing tears. To those that deny another's right to be, I remind you that the angels sang in celebration of you on the day of your birth. To those who see only division and separateness, I remind you that a part is born only by bisecting a whole. For those who have forgotten the tender mercy of a mother's embrace, I send a gentle breeze to caress your brow. To those who still feel somehow incomplete, I offer the perfect sanctity of this very moment. And so with peace, may you enjoy the music to come and join us for the following 2 sessions of this mini conference. Thank you for coming. Thank you again to our panelists, and I hope to see all of you and then some in about 20 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Leo and Patricia, if you could give me the ability to share my screen, I can get some music going.
Okay. Are you Lane?
Yep.
And while we're working on that, for those of you who are sticking around, if you want to play with the pen and paper or do some writing or some thinking, here are a few questions based from the presentations before. What role do you think stigmatization plays in criminalizing people and increasing recidivism? When have you experienced or seen the why trifect in your life? When have you felt the power of being heard and valued? How can you show up and do that for someone else? And what role can hope play in bringing about systemic change for good? Food for thought while we listen to some music.